Hi, Shiko.
Hi, Mike.
Welcome yet again. This is episode 2 of Untitled with Mike and Shiko.
Yes.
But we're still looking for a name. So by all means, go ahead and feel free to share with us names that you would like. Thank you for all those who tuned in to our previous episode. We appreciate you. Kumbuka, we are still on Spotify and also Apple Podcasts. So make sure you just go and take a listen and we can have grown conversations as grown folk.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me start here first of all. How's Mother's Day? Did I do good?
I had a great Mother's Day. You did well. You and the kids all did well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I talked about something on Mother's Day on radio. A lot of guys were saying that Mother's Day are for their individual mothers and not their wives. That wives should wait for Women's Day or Valentine's Day.
Boy, that is crazy.
That's crazy.
That is nonsense.
All right. Otherwise, any other big thing that happened to you this week?
No. Well, the week just started, so no, not yet. I'm still a little shy doing this podcast. But we shall manage.
Okay. That being said, let's dive right into it.
Sure.
Sometimes I sit down and I think a lot about decisions that I made in the past. And I end up wondering whether or not my life would have turned out differently where you and I are concerned. Especially if I didn't meet the people that I met. Would I have met you? Would we be here today?
Like if we had met each other earlier.
Yeah.
When we were both single.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine that? Like, if we met in, like, 2012 or 2013.
Yeah.
What would the story be now?
Well, I think we've talked about this before. Like, we were both different people at that time. And maybe the people we were would not have gotten along as well as we're getting along now. Like, we were not evolved enough to get along as well as we do.
So the experiences needed to happen.
I actually think so. I don't think you were the man that you are now.
No.
And I don't think I would have appreciated a man like you as you are now back then. I think it was going through what I went through that has made me appreciate you.
But I mean, that's true. And speaking of things that we go through, you know, sometimes when you're in your 30s and you're in your 40s, right? A lot of the times you've been character developed enough. Let me call it that. Enough. To the point that you even ask yourself and you wonder whether or not dating is worth it anymore sometimes. And I want to talk a bit about those moments of character development. Yeah, because I've had a few. But I think recently, the scariest part for me, like I said in the previous podcast, was when I realized that I had the capability of actually taking my own life. When I was looking at it just as a solution to everything that was happening.
In your relationship?
Yeah, in my relationship with my ex at the time. Because I was thinking, why was it always so volatile? That relationship was never one where there was peace and quiet like we have now. It was always just volatile. It always felt like there's one thing to argue about, there's another thing to argue about. And because there was a kid involved, I had that idea of sticking with that person for the sake of the kids. And that for me was what was keeping me going. Those ones of, let me just stay for the sake of a kid. But then at that point where I saw that I could take my life.
As a way of getting out of being trapped. You're trapped in a situation that you hate. You've described that moment to me. In vivid detail and to some of your close friends. I had gotten off work. I came home. And as usual, it was another fight in that house. And it was like one of those fights where there would be shouting matches and things like that. I chose, you know what, I'm not going to get into this. I just decided, you know what, let me stop. I went to the balcony. I started smoking a cigarette. She went and locked herself in the bedroom. And as I stood there, I looked down because I lived on the 4th floor of this apartment block. And I was looking down and I was like, do you know if right now I just fall, all these problems I'm going through right now will not cease to exist. And I contemplated it over the course of an entire cigarette. And you can imagine how long that would take. So at the end of it, I decided, you know what, no. No. So I just went, put on my shoes, got in my car, and I just took a drive.
And I decided, let me just drive around and calm down. I'll come back home later.
And you say that's what scared you straight into thinking, if it's a choice between my life and this relationship, you'll choose.
My biggest worry was actually my kids. Because I was like, okay, fine, you jump. Let's assume you pass away. And who's going to feed your kids? Who is going to make sure they go to school? Who's going to make sure they have what they need? So that is what made me stop. However, if I did not have children, I wonder whether or not I would have stopped. I think that's why I always say to this day that walking saved my life. Yeah.
That is very scary. And every time you tell that story or we talk about it, I feel really sad because I know there are people, men and women, who are still in situations where they feel
they're just stuck.
Trapped.
They're there. And you can't leave for one reason or the other, especially in your 30s and 40s. And I think maybe for women, it could be the case that you're thinking, now I'm with this guy. We're already 2-3 kids in, right? Where am I going? Like, what do I do now? It's like I'm going to start over with someone else.
And let me tell you, for women, it's not a competition about, for which gender is leaving a toxic situation harder. It's not a competition. I think it's hard. Every situation is unique. But I will say for women, especially when you have children, you are faced with primarily two things for most women. One is the fear of financial hardship once you leave. Another is a fear of that burden of shame you'll carry with you.
Yeah, there's a stigma attached to it.
There's a stigma. Yeah. And, for every single mom, there's a single dad out there. But the single moms are the ones that are looked down on.
That's very true.
So when you're making that decision to leave, it's going to come with financial nightmares, as it did for me. It's going to come with that stigma, as it does for most single moms. So in that moment of, am I leaving, am I staying, there's so many things you're thinking of, and all of them are very real and very true, and so easy to feel trapped.
For you, what is it that pushed you over the edge? The world doesn't know your story like the way I know it, but here's the thing. What is that thing that, clicked to you? Like for me, it was almost deciding to commit suicide. What was it for you that pushed you over the edge and you said, you know what, I cannot be here anymore? So
I think like most relationships that fail or that end, in hindsight, you can always see, there were signs, there were red flags that maybe you missed that spoke to incompatibility and other things. So, of course, in retrospect, you can say, this relationship had been ending for like a straight year before it finally ended. But if I was to talk about the moment that for me did it, so obviously, like most women who are in relationships, or even men, let me just broaden it up, you will fight for it for a while. You won't just throw in the towel, especially if you've been with someone for a good amount of time. Maybe you have kids, you will fight for it. But the moment for me where I completely reeled back from the fighting and just moved into another space of, okay, I need to leave, it was one particular night where I didn't feel physically safe. You would think that is what did it, but it was actually calling my parents in the middle of the night. It was like 4 a.m. And hearing the panic in their voices sort of scared me, because I was like, because
when you're in it, you don't see it. Right? You don't see it. You're there, and everyone else around you can tell that, this
is not okay. I mean, there was, my parents did that in the middle of the night. My brother at one point asking me, like, which one of your friends can I fly out to where you are to come and get you. We had some members of staff in the house, like housekeeper, nanny, who literally pulled me aside, like, Mama, you're not okay. You're like locking doors behind you. You are wasting away. You've lost so much weight. Like, this is not safe. And then now, like, my parents saying, lock the doors and carry a whistle around your neck. And then, of course, because my dad is an academic, he's like, hide your degrees. I mean, stuff that now you have like an out of body experience, and you're like, okay, I need to listen to what other people might be seeing that I can't see in this moment.
Yes.
And just listen to what they're saying.
And funny enough that you mentioned about, like, in hindsight, that you could see the signs. That's something we actually fail to understand, because the signs usually are there. Even in my case, I look at it in hindsight sometimes and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, the normal me would have seen that. If I saw that in a friend of mine, I'd be like, hey, brah. And then it's only after the breakup occurs that people also start telling you more things, and they start telling you things like, I wanted to say something, I just had to keep it to myself.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So why do you think we don't see signs? Like, we know something is unhealthy. We are smart individuals, like both of us. I mean, we obviously are emotionally intelligent. What is it?
I mean, maybe love blinds to an extent, because we were both deeply in love in the relationships we were in. Maybe love blinds to an extent. I was having this conversation with two ladies this weekend who both were in long-term relationships that didn't work out. And I was telling them, like, right now when I look back, the flags were bright red. Bright red. Like, what's wrong with me? And they're like, Shiko, you have to give yourself grace. Because obviously, hindsight, you can see now. But unless they're obvious deal breakers, I feel like there are some signs that are more insidious. They are not as obvious. So those ones, I don't blame myself. I'm trying not to blame myself for missing those ones. So I think love blinds, and also sometimes it's not as obvious. Some things creep up and they start out small, but then they grow more and more serious and devastating.
The one thing that I also got really scared of when leaving my ex was my ability to see my child. I mean, and I know it happens very differently for men and women. Most of the time you'll find that the woman goes with the kids and the man has to now do that whole visitation thing. Do you as women also have that fear, like, okay, I'm going with the kids, okay, now I know I have the kids. Like, is there a fear that, what about their relationship with their dad? Because now this is going, right? Yeah, our relationship is done. Me and that person, it's over. But do ladies ever think like, okay, I want my kids to also know their dad?
Of course. I know there's this stereotype out there that women will go with the kids and not let them see the dads, and like will nima access on purpose. But I know a lot of single moms, and I can tell you for free, there's not one case where I have seen that. Except like one case. But as a mom, you want your children to have a relationship with their biological father. And it's something that I've done with my children, and something I will always do. Because how does it benefit me to deny that relationship?
I don't know, but there are people who just cut it off. It's like, because we've broken up. Let's assume, like, for example, in certain cases, if someone says, oh, because you left me, now I shall keep these kids away from you. Or because you broke up with me in a bad way, so I'm going to keep these kids away from you. And that was my biggest fear. That will I get access to this child? And it's my firstborn, I didn't have that fear. But for my secondborn, that was my biggest fear. Because I also knew the kind of person that I was breaking up with. And I knew what kind of heart she had. And I knew there's a way she could weaponize the child against me. So it stays as a fear. And then what I hate is that after such breakups, the labels that keep being thrown around, like, this person is this, that person is that, like, oh, that one's a deadbeat, or that woman is a miserable, bitter woman who is trying to, weaponize the children. And I always wonder why these breakups can't just be smooth. Like, honestly, it's not working.
Right?
We just iishe tu hivyo.
Yeah, I mean, and every co-parenting relationship is different. There are some that are smooth and amicable, and you're on the same page. You put the kids first. The courts do not even need to get involved. We both have co-parenting relationships that are like that. There are other co-parenting relationships where it seems like you cannot get on the same page. And you do have to involve the courts. And in those cases, it now comes down to the courts who have to mediate and dictate that access.
Yes.
So whereas before, you would have been like, come get your kids whenever you want.
Yeah.
Now you've gone the court route.
The court system.
And the court can say, well, actually, this is the way things are going to be from now on until we've settled this whole dispute.
Yes.
I do feel like many times when breakups are fresh, they're very tumultuous, and I hope that as years go on, they get a lot better.
Yep, I do hope the same thing. And by the way, if you are going through a breakup that you find is a bit difficult, that is tricky, please don't hesitate to drop a comment and let us know what exactly it is you're going through. Like in the previous episode, I had mentioned that one thing that made my breakup easy was having that friend in you. Like, we started hanging out a lot. But I'm sure there's someone who doesn't have that. You don't have that good friend of yours who has your back. In fact, if you had close mutual friends, please note, if you've been dating someone all the way into your 30s, into your 40s, you've built strong mutual friends. Each one of them is picking a side. This one, I'm still friends with the dude, or I'm still friends with the chick, whichever. I usually wonder how those people navigate that.
People who don't have
that kind of support system. Because I know when you came to Nairobi, you really struggled.
I struggled emotionally, financially, mentally. I mean, in every way possible. You have to understand, when me and the kids moved to Nairobi, we didn't even have beds to sleep on.
That's how bad it was.
We did not have, when we were moving to Malindi, because most of the houses there are furnished, we sold a lot of stuff. 99% of stuff. And we were living in a furnished house. I had even sold my car.
Yes.
So when we moved back, first of all, you're paying 2 months deposit, 1 month's rent. You're paying for movers to come and get the things you had. So we had cooker, fridge, a crib, and a dining table and a shelf, and our clothes and dishes. So moving back was such an expensive, financially devastating affair. If it were literally not for my family supporting me financially, you remember they were scared for me. So they were very willing to help. And thank God for that. I mean, honestly, for women who have to leave relationships with their children, some women leave with just the clothes on their back.
And they get on a matatu and that's
just
it.
Go.
And
because sometimes you have to choose your physical safety, you have to choose your emotional well-being, your mental well-being. So all of that, now we are in Nairobi. I've literally borrowed, begged, drained everything I have just to move me and the kids here. I remember there was a point we were in this new apartment and I was sitting on the floor with the kids. And have you ever had a moment where you're like, this is where my life is?
Yeah, because that's literally starting again from scratch.
From scratch. I mean, once again, I'll say there are women who live with just the clothes on their backs. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that we were privileged enough. At least we had a fridge, we had clothes, we just didn't have sofas. We didn't have beds to sleep in. I had to get all of that on credit because there was no way I could afford it. I mean, it was so devastating. And then so there's the financial nightmare. I had to beg a school to take them because I didn't have money for fees. So it was a financial nightmare. And then there's the shame. I mean, it felt like, you've been reduced to nothing. I was even like, I had managed to buy myself a car. And now I moved back. It's like I had set myself, or I felt like I had stepped back 5 years,
It's like a reset in life. Like you're now back to default settings and you have to start thinking about buying these things over again.
With more children, exactly. Yes. And when women stay, I get it. And there are women who DM me and they're like, but you look so happy and you've glowed up. And I thank God for that, and I have. But let me not lie to you, 2022 was the hardest year of my life.
And you had COVID at that time?
No, COVID was over.
Oh, COVID was over.
Yeah, 2022 COVID, things were open again.
Yeah.
Before leaving Malindi, I begged a boss who I worked for in 2013 to hire me.
Yeah.
So at least I had a job. It was the kind of jobs where you're paid every 3 months. But still, I had a job. But the devastation was real. And because God is a good God, we are where we are today. Like, things have been restored that I could never imagine, and tenfold. You know what I mean? Like, even small things. Like, your life will get back on track, but let me not lie, it's very hard.
I think for me, I didn't have necessarily that sense of fear, considering I was the one who was doing everything anyway. I mean, I was the money man. I was all of that. So the fear wasn't in moving on. But the thing was letting go of the memories of the things that were in my house. I remember this time when I moved to Lavington, and then you came to my house one time and you told me you can't sit on my sofas because those were the sofas that I had in the previous the previous relationship.
Hey, those memories, I didn't want that carried over. So I was like,
Yeah, but for me it was that, because you remember I still had my youngest daughter's crib. I still had the bed that I had made for my eldest daughter. It was still there. I had some few things, and like their shawls and stuff like that. And that for me used to be so painful. There are times when, let's say, you had errands to run, or you had gone to work or stuff like that. I used to sit in their room and I'd just chill and just smell the scent of the duvets, and you feel like you want to see them so badly. But the minute you try to engage a conversation in that regard, you're going to be shouted at, screamed at, or for one reason or the other, simply because, I just didn't want to continue with that relationship. It scared me. But one thing that I do love about you is, I remember when you forced me and you told me you're going to go and see your daughter today.
Yes.
And we got into my car and we went together and we spent a day with my daughter for that entire, I think it was a Saturday.
Yeah. And it was beautiful.
It was really nice. And I think having you has given me that kind of courage, basically, to confront these women about, this is what I want for me and my child. But leaving for me, that one was different from the first one, because the first one, we weren't necessarily in a relationship, but for this one, it was a relationship that was supposed to head somewhere. But the nastiness that was involved, I think, made me step back, shy away, and say, like, you know what, maybe let her grow up a bit, and that's the pain that I carry of not being able to have a reasonable conversation with my ex and have her to say, you know what, I want to see my child in this manner. I want to do this for my child, but it's always going to be a fight one way or the other.
So do you think for many men that's the hardest thing when they are choosing to leave the mother of their children? The hardest thing is, will they have access to their kids?
No. I think the biggest thing they're afraid of is their woman moving on with another man. Because let me be honest. Because as much as you guys have your beefs and everything, I mean, this guy is thinking you're my wife.
Excuse?
You know what? Yeah, that's how they think. They think like, this is my wife. Yes, you've separated, but no man, I tell you, likes the idea of a woman that he's married or has had a very long relationship with moving on with another man.
Excuse me, but once the relationship is over, what did you think would happen? I think a lot of men think once a woman has your children, there's nowhere she's going. No one is going to take her. Like this one.
That's basically the same thing. But now when they see someone stepping up and taking over a certain responsibility, then now they start feeling, oh, snap.
Wait, are you saying you will feel some type of way when your exes move on?
No.
What do you mean?
No. Let me explain to you. Number one, none of them, absolutely none of them, has been my wife.
Okay.
In my head, the way I reason, and you know how I reasoned, how everything must make sense. In my head, we did 1, 2, 3 things. A baby was a result. What you do with your life is your business. Had I put a ring on someone and they were moving on, I guarantee you my heart would feel some type of way. I would try and win you back. I would, but there were no promises that were made. I was always trying to do the right thing. I knew that our baby was born, but I didn't want to be that kind of guy who says, you know what, screw this and you ejipange. Because at the end of the day, what else was she going to do? Who else was going to support that kid? So I needed to be a part of that child. I still need to be a part of that child's life. So that for me is my only pain point. If she chooses to move on with someone, by all means, in fact, I'll celebrate. I will buy the air ticket kwanza. Nimwambie, yes, please. You can go and date this person and be happy. For my wife, however, I think before I even let her go, the fight I will put up to keep her will be one for books.
That's what men say. Okay, I'm sorry. I just feel like for women, once we physically leave, some people say, women move on so fast after the end of a relationship, like faster than men. And I've always told you, I think it's because we mourn the loss of the relationship for so long. Like when we're unhappy, before we finally exit, we've been unhappy for so long.
Like you break up even while you're still in the relationship.
While you're still in the relationship, we are there telling you we're not happy. You're hearing us cry night after night after night. So that the day that this woman leaves, what are you telling her? We've been giving you time. Like you've had so much time that we're now you want to suggest counseling?
But I think it's because a lot of the times in moments of emotion, sometimes communication breaks down really, really badly.
That's true.
And so when one party is feeling some type of way and the other party is not seeing exactly what is going on, and that's why I hate terms, for example, like when people call each other this thing called simping, and everyone likes talking about, he's a simp, he's a simp, he's a simp. And I keep saying, you will never ever date a woman without some level of being a simp. Happily. If you want to date a woman happily, you'll have to be a simp on some level. Yeah, it could be financially you're a simp. It could be emotionally you're a simp. It could be spiritually even you're a simp. Yeah, but at some level, because nothing occurs in an extreme, especially in relationships. Nothing can work in an extreme environment where you as a man say that it has to be me, the way I say it, and you do it this way and you should do it. Then how is that going to work? That even beats the sense of nature itself. Nature abhors a vacuum. Two parties have to come together and simp for each other.
That's the thing. It has to be reciprocated.
Yeah, it has to be reciprocated. So in moments of emotion, sometimes I feel ladies tend to shut down because you're already feeling emotional. You don't want to talk about it. You assume that I should be able to know it off head. I should be able to just figure it out. Yet at that moment, I'm sitting down and thinking, this woman kazi yake ni makasiriko 24/7. Why can't she just say what's bugging her? And then there's now communication breakdown. But in that moment, an understanding man should come and understand that, okay, this is how she feels. I may not understand what is going on, but as her man, it is my duty to figure it out and find out. So I should go and engage her. And if you feel she needs just a bit of space, give it to her. But don't give her too much space. Come back and keep being nice. That's what a lot of men will say. Oh, he's simping. No, you're not simping. You are being concerned about the needs of your woman. Can you imagine if we do that for kids? When a kid hurts their finger or a baby hurts a part of their body and they can't even talk, all they're doing is crying and don't you simp for that kid? And
of course.
Yeah, you don't understand what they're saying. You don't even know what happened.
But you try and make it right.
You try and make it right. So if you can do it for a baby, why can't you do it for your baby?
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about signs.
Yes.
Like red flags. What are your deal breakers?
Me, I just have one.
What?
I do not forgive infidelity.
Infidelity?
Ever.
Same, that's a deal breaker for me.
God do not give me that grace.
Wait, I feel like one for you is also disrespect. I don't think...
Oh, yes. I don't like someone, especially someone shouting at me. I really hate that. In fact, the minute that happens, I walk out of the room.
So mine are infidelity and all forms of abuse, right? So if it's not a deal breaker, so let's say that's not the problem, how do you know when to fight? Like, we're about to get married, right?
Yes.
Obviously, we want it to be forever, but we've both been in situations where
that forever was cut short.
Exactly. So, like, how do you know when you should stay and fight or when it's time to bounce?
Just like you've said, you've mentioned things that for you are irreversible. So you should have your irreversible minimums, just like in business. There are crimes you can commit, you'll just get a warning letter. Yeah? And there are crimes you can commit and you're fired, right? So you need to figure out what is it that I can do, whether or not the offense being committed is one that's a fireable offense or one that just needs a warning that this should not happen again.
Put them on PIP.
Yeah, you put them on PIP. I mean, that's the best analogy for me to use. People, a lot of the times, treat their jobs way better than they treat their relationships. People fight for jobs. You should fight for your person. If you have not done anything that is beyond her irreducible minimums, fight for them. Or it could be, for example, you asked me to do something and you've been asking me to do this one thing and I've kept on pushing, postponing, dodging and all of these things and blah, blah, but you've become frustrated. Yeah. And let's assume you raise your voice at me, right? Are you valid to feel frustrated? Yes. Should you have raised your voice at me? Probably not. But at this point now, I'm pissed off at you. And you've decided, hey, you know what, me, I can't deal with people who don't keep up with their words. And you decided, me, I'm going to stay at my folks for 2 weeks. Come on. Of course I fight for you.
Yeah.
I get in the car and I go and I tell you, stop being silly.
Mike was upset with me because I left my engagement ring at home.
Yes.
And so he drove in a huff and a puff to my office, thrust the ring at me and told me, don't you ever take this ring off again.
Don't you ever take that ring off again. That's a way of me fighting for you. Right? If you're mad at someone, it's normal. You're a human being. You will get upset. But if I've not crossed the line, that point where you've drawn a line, surely fight for your person.
Okay. So unless it's one of the unforgivables, according to you, whatever that is, you should fight for your person.
Yeah, kukasirika is just like the floods we've had in Nairobi. See, they came and went.
And they went.
So, boss, I mean, someone will be mad. There's no way two people are together for long without being mad at each other. In fact, any relationship, I believe that where two people don't fight, I don't think there's any love there. Mutakwaruzana at some point. You guys will rub each other off at some point. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the relationship. I think even personally, I never understood that in my youngest times, you know, because I used to be any small fight, any small reason to bounce, and me, I'll be like, hey, deuces. Once I put a label on you, oh, look at, hey, she's a drama queen. Oh, this one, she's that. Oh, that one, she's that. But bruh, until when?
I think it's good that you've used the analogy of, you know, treating your relationship like as well as you treat your job or a business.
Yeah.
Because I actually do think love is not enough in a relationship.
It's not.
There has to be something more than that. I think if there's one thing I have learned is that if you two do not fundamentally agree on some very basic things, even if you've fallen in love with each other, it will not work.
Yeah, it won't. The fact of the matter is, and I don't know if someone listening is a Christian, but the Bible tells you to love each other like Christ loved the church. But how did Christ love the church?
He died for the church.
He died for the church, right? And how did also Christ advise people to love each other? He advised us to love each other the way a child loves, childlike love, right? When a kid loves you, it doesn't matter what you do, right? They love you regardless. But however, because you are now an adult, now you add also layers to that love. And you have to have expectations where you say, as my woman, this is what I expect. And as a man, this is what I can give. Don't give expectations without giving what you can put on the table. Yes, I expect this of you, but as of me, this is what also I can give. If we cannot meet somewhere in between, yo, I don't care if you love that person in what manner, way, shape, or form. That relationship is doomed to fail.
Agreed. And to bring in another biblical analogy, it's like when the Bible talks about being equally or unequally yoked. Because yoking is something they did or do, I don't even know if they still do, to cattle, right? So even if the two cows, let's pretend, two bulls love each other to death, if they're unequally yoked, they will never get to the same destination. And so I think one thing I love about our relationship is that we agree very strongly on the roles that we play in our homes and to each other.
Yes.
And we share fundamental beliefs that make me feel like this is a relationship where we are equally yoked.
Yeah. In fact, I know I owe you a few date nights.
You do. Date nights are very important because it's important to me.
But you see, that's the thing. Because I have that information, then it's easy for me to understand what it is that is required of me. A lot of the times, women don't share that information. You need to share that information. It's not you being nagging. It's the fact of the matter. Hey, I expect XYZ. Yeah. Now, if you feel you cannot give me XYZ, I'm willing to compromise to this level. Even after my compromise, you still cannot give it to me. Whoa, you
then
guys.
We have a problem.
Yeah.
But you see, like you said, I feel like a lot of us are afraid of seeming nagging or seeming demanding or seeming like we're just whining when we say, I want date night. I've even told you that myself. Like, once I tell you I need date nights, I shouldn't have to keep reminding you. That's how I feel. I don't want to feel like I'm nagging. Yeah. Right. Like I've already told you, please let's do date nights every so often. Yeah. So like now if we've gone 2 months and there's not been a date night, it's like, but you knew. I mean, you know this.
Exactly.
So I shouldn't have to tell you again and again.
Yeah, exactly. That is very true. But anyway, in my defense, you know why we haven't gone on date nights of late. She had this remodeling thing she's doing in our family room. Where? Let's just say it has not been cheap.
We have a project. We have projects we're working on. And so that has taken a backseat. But last question for you. Because when people say, oh, this relationship is toxic, how would you define a toxic relationship that should be abandoned?
I think it's hard to define that because there are people who like certain things in relationships which in my view would be toxic, but to another may not be.
So relative. It's relative.
It's very relative to determine whether or not a relationship is toxic. I know of women, for example, who say that their men don't love them unless they hit them. Yikes. Like that's how they see love. Now, I would see it as toxic, but it's working for her for some reason. I know men who, for example, tell me that, you know, they don't mind if their women can potea for a whole weekend without even saying where she's at. Like, there's no accountability.
Wait.
Yeah. And me, I'll be like, unatumiwa vibaya. So I don't know how to put it. I can tell you what is toxic for me. What is toxic for me is if you were not allowing me to do things in the way that I see or feel they should be done. Like if I always felt everything is your way, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Like if I feel like I'm under control, like I'm under your thumb properly, for lack of a better way to put it, I'd start withdrawing. In my mind, I'll just shut down and I'll be like, you know what, I can't. And because there are women I know who, in Kiswahili wanasema kukalia mzee wao. I feel like for me that would be very toxic. The minute you are violent with me, I can never take that because I'm never violent with the person I'm with, ever. However, we can discuss that matter if we're in a pub and some woman comes and decided to slap you across the face. In that moment, tafadhali, you'll have to allow me to be a man to that other woman, not to you. But that being said, I think for me, toxicity in my definition is if I feel like I don't have a say in the relationship. Like we always have to do things your way. I would feel like,
Okay, that's fair. And I think it speaks to your character and how you see your role in a relationship and in a household as that of a leader. And if you are denied that role, then
what's my point here?
Then what's your point here? I think for me, besides the obvious intense toxic situations like abuse or, you know, someone who cheats on you, bila shame, I think for me, it would be being in a relationship where I'm consistently ignored.
Yeah.
So someone doesn't honor my desires, my fears, my love languages. I think for me, that would count as toxic. And I say this to you a lot. Like, I feel like if I start to feel invisible to you or irrelevant to you, if I start to feel like you don't even care that I'm crying in bed, you don't care that I'm upset about something, that would feel unhealthy. Toxic is such a trigger word, but it would feel extremely unhealthy and so toxic.
Well, that is true. Well, you know what? You can also share with us what you feel is toxic. Don't forget, this is the Untitled Podcast with Mike and Shiko. That's not the official name, by the way. We are still looking for a name. This is episode 2, where basically we have been talking about leaving toxic situations or unhealthy situations, and of course, trying to move on. Shiko and I have moved on. We are together. We're getting married soon. Are you excited?
Very excited.
Okay. I'll make sure I let you know I've been working on that thing that we're supposed to be working on. I know
don't
you think I don't.
Don't even get me started.
And also, please feel free to follow us on our social media pages. Mine's at Mike_Mondo on Instagram.
And mine is Shiko Guru.
We're going to start our own page soon.
And hopefully also a YouTube page for the podcast for people who don't listen on Spotify or Apple.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Kumbuka, next week on Sunday, we are still together. So make sure you make a date with us, Mike and Shiko, of course, as we have grown conversations about navigating life in your 30s and 40s, especially in a relationship setup where kids are involved.